A year ago, when Amazon acquired Whole Foods, John Mackey, who was the head of Whole Foods, said, "Oh my God, it was love at first sight." A year later, the employees of Whole Foods working within the Amazon ecosystem are now contemplating starting a union, because there is an obvious cultural mismatch. While Amazon had a very tight culture, top-down, efficiency-driven, extremely structured, individual-centric, Whole Foods had a very loose culture, which is groupthink, innovation, bottom-up, employee participation. Now, when these kinds of obvious dissonances surface, there is going to be a lot of challenge for the organization to succeed. A study at Harvard, and I'd like to quote, collected data where in over 4,500 international mergers from 32 different countries between 89 and 2013, those with especially large cultural mismatches saw their yearly net income drop by over $600 million. So we presume that culture is, by the way, taken care of. The monetary promise of a merger is what makes all the difference. But this is the soft glue which will facilitate that to ultimately achieve its objectives. So let's look at two examples. And this is an area which is of great interest in the current times. So Wells Fargo, in 2012, it was a bank with the highest market cap. It was number one among the large banks in the US. And it had done very well. It was almost exemplary among its peers, because during the 2008 crisis, it had not ventured into the subprime lending market, because they believed that that would be against their core values. And by and large, in the community, Wells Fargo had the image of a virtuous community banker. In fact, HDFC Bank looked up to Wells Fargo for several of its best practices, because it was able to balance the employee aspect with the financial success. What happened about a decade later is of interest. In 2016, the US Consumer Financial Protection Bureau revealed that 5,300 low-level Wells Fargo workers had been systematically committing fraud by setting up dummy accounts for customers. You look back and you realize that in 1998, actually, Northwestern Bank, which was a Midwestern bank, had acquired Wells Fargo. And effectively, between the two, they had, over a 100-year period, acquired almost 2,000 small and big banking institutions in the central, Midwestern, and western parts of America. So effectively, they were managing so many diverse cultures. The mythological nobility at the top, which was obviously being displayed, wasn't what was getting reflected at the lower levels of the organization, and I'll share that in a bit. So what happened as soon as this came out, Wells Fargo first said that yes, we take the responsibility and this is our mistake, etc. And then when the federal regulators pursued this matter, they said that it is the strategy of Wells Fargo which is responsible for the employees behaving in this fashion. And Wells Fargo was not willing to take up the responsibility to accept that aspect, that we are not responsible. The 5,300 low-level employees, some of whom were part-time, are responsible, and they are the dishonest guys who have caused this problem. So in a federal hearing, one of the senators asked the CEO of Wells Fargo, did any of you at the top management level give back a single nickel that you have earned when this fraud was underway? The answer was no. Was any of the senior leaders, they shown the door during this period? No. This is very interesting what that senator said. She said, your definition of accountability is to push this on your low-level employees. This is gutless leadership. So when we talk about organization culture, the role of the leader becomes very, very important. It later on emerged that Wells Fargo had given a target to the employees at any cost to achieve cross-selling of products to their customers to the tune of 8, because it resonated with great. Over 10 years, their average cross-selling ratio was about 6.27 products per household. And about 5 years before this scam unfolded, the CEO had said, once we achieve great, which is 8, well, then we will go on for 10. So that was the kind of strategy. The ladder wasn't on the right wall. The dissonance with the culture was very obvious. And that had led to some kind of problems that we just saw. Let me contrast that with another example, which is now India. So as I said, HDFC Bank benchmarked some of its practices when it was formed with Wells Fargo. In 2000, Times Bank merged with HDFC Bank. This was the turn of the millennium. It was a big deal at that time because HDFC was among the new age private sector banks in those years. The first few. Everybody thought that HDFC Bank, with most of its senior leadership from eminent international banks, will treat the Times Bank employees as mercenaries. And the greatest concern at such times is whether my people will be taken care of well or not. So the situation at HDFC Bank was very different, and that's because Mr. Puri played a very important role, and the role of leadership when it comes to making this happen. He created an environment such that even the CXOs within HDFC were not sure whether their roles would continue after the Times Bank merger is accomplished. And the master stroke which Mr. Puri utilized was that he made the head of HR of Times Bank, Mandeep Maitra, to become the head of HR at HDFC Bank. Now, Mandeep knew exactly the skill sets of the people back in Times Bank and ensured that there is great alignment between Times Bank and HDFC Bank. The concerns of the industry were misplaced. The employees who came in were quite well empowered and integrated into the HDFC culture. 8 years later, HDFC acquired Centurion Bank of Punjab. It was the largest merger at that time. Centurion Bank of Punjab was itself a merger of 4 banks. The Centurion Bank, the Bank of Punjab, the Indian operations of the Bank of Muscat, and the Lord Krishna Bank from Kerala. And each of these had very diverse cultures. There wasn't that much of resonance. In fact, Lord Krishna Bank employees had opposed the acquisition by Centurion Bank, and they had kind of gone on strike and had not serviced customers for months together. Now, what do you do at such point in time? Again, the leader steps in. Mr. Puri and Mandeep went all over the place trying to communicate to them that the new bank is not focusing on trying to reassign or rationalize or release employees, but wants to empower each one of them to be part of one HDFC Bank culture. That engagement, that going forward and having a word with the employees in far off places, whether in South India or in the North, made a lot of difference, and the sense of unification of culture and the sense of identity which they wanted to bring about was possible because they engaged with people and made them feel empowered in a new setup. I was reading yesterday in the newspaper a similar kind of concern being observed by the executive director of Bank of Baroda in the light of the recent mergers of large public sector banks. The greatest concern that she had was not about the systems alignment, because the mergers have taken place keeping in mind the back office kind of alignments, the information system alignments, but how the employees feel when they are part of Dena Bank or a part of the other bank when they have been merged into Bank of Baroda, and that stepmotherly treatment which the acquiring institution should not be meting out to them so that they may feel more empowered, was the primary concern for the executive director, not so much on the performance side, because they said we'll grow at 15% in any case. So key lesson is mergers cause problems when people are not on board. The top management has to walk the extra mile during a merger to ensure that the organization culture resonates with the new set of employees who feel engaged and empowered.